Hello, everyone. Welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Vikas Garg, who is the founder of Paytail, which is revolutionizing the offline commerce by enabling instant paperless EMIs to customers. Hi, Vikas. Welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya. My pleasure to be here.
To start with, I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about Paytail.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vikas, one of the co-founders at Paytail. I'm a corporate banker by background. I spent close to about 10, 12 years in the space with banks like IDBI, IndusInd Bank, where I was essentially solving for the large corporates, essentially the blue chip companies of the country, and lending them and structuring few of the transactions in a very high ticket kind of segment, right? After spending a couple of years with a few NBFCs, in my last stint before starting Paytail, I spent close to about 3 years with a US-based fintech called C2FO, where I was leading the India business for capital finance for the entire C2FO. And my role essentially was to raise capital from banks, large global banks and Indian banks, so that capital can actually be used in C2FO's Indian marketplace, and it can actually be supplied to the small SMEs who were actually borrowing that capital. And in exchange of a dynamic discount that we were discovering, they were basically getting to early realize the entire receipts that they are receiving from the large corporates. So I pulled in close to about $100 million, and that acted as a big growth spurt for the entire platform. Mm-hmm. And after that, I started Paytail. My other co-founder is Amit, who's been around with me in C2FO, and we've worked together for almost 3.5 years there. It's been 2 years on this magnificent journey since that time we have started. We actually begun the commercial operations in April 2021. So that's a quick snippet about me. And if I have to talk about what we're building in Paytail, we're building a tech stack, and we built a very large tech stack where the problem statement that we are trying to solve, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities outside of the urban market, there are millions of small retailers which are sitting, right? These retailers could be selling products like a consumer durable electronic appliance, a mobile phone, which are the traditional categories, or they could be selling some of the niche categories that we are targeting, like, for example, bicycle or sports equipments, right? Or they could be selling tires, electricals, electric two-wheelers. All of these categories of retailers is something that we are targeting. And the main market is outside of urban markets in tier 2, tier 3 geographies. What we have typically seen, unlike a very large retailer, large format retailer, or unlike an e-com player, which actually has the entire fancy tools with them to really convert the customers, cross-sell, upsell to all of these guys, these retailers lack all of those tools. And on top of it, the kind of categories that we're talking about, these are large ticket items. Whenever a consumer is wanting to purchase this item, especially in a tier 2, tier 3 city, credit always comes in the middle, right? So we thought that, okay, this is a very large, meaningful problem statement to solve, because what we are talking about, on one side, there is a $1 trillion spend which is happening in the country from a consumer standpoint. And about $300 billion of that spend is actually happening on discretionary segments, the kind of segment that we just spoke about. 85% of India's retail still comes in from small mom and pop counters, and no one is really solving for that. So what we are essentially doing here, we are enabling all the trade financing for the trade or the sales that the merchant is making to the user. We basically come in, give them a platform where, with all the large banks and NBFCs tie-up that we have been able to build, they supply the capital instantly in that transaction, and the consumer gets to buy the product. So it's a consumer durable financing playbook that we have. On demand side, we tie up with a lot of large corporates, and just to name a few of the guys in consumer durable space, we work with folks like Voltas, Blue Star. In mobile space, we work with guys like Samsung, Vivo, Oppo. We pretty much own the entire cycle market in the country, almost 70% of it. All the large brands like Hero Cycle, Firefox, TS Cycle, KTM, Outdoor 91 are all already there on the platform. And the second tier on the demand side is actually the merchant network. We've been able to create a merchant network of over 80,000 merchants on the platform so far. which have actually originated from the brands that we are talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we onboard these merchants, we give them a QR code, and the consumer scans the QR code and gets to transact. And the capital gets supplied by the banks and NBFCs to fund that transaction. This is essentially the problem statement that we solve.
Got it. Can you tell us a more detailed explanation of how the entire thing works in the back end? And just curious to know, this is a problem statement that companies like Bajaj Finserv has tried to solve and solve to a great extent also. So what's unique, what's new with your approach?
Well, Bajaj Finserv has been an inspiration. It's a magnificent institution, right? But I'll tell you, like a lot of other large banks and NBFCs who are also there in the space, right? While Bajaj Finserv has been able to build the largest franchise in our space, it is largely limited, basically, in a large format retail store or a medium format retail store. And the business is highly skewed towards the transactions which are actually being originated in the urban market.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, my playbook or Paytail's playbook is outside of this territory. We are targeting a retailer which is more chotu guy, small guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where the overall potential to generate an EMI volume from that retail counter is not as high as for to meet the appetite of a large player like a Bajaj or whosoever, right? It doesn't really make sense. The unit economics for a large player, when especially when they're operating on a man and machinery model, doesn't really make sense to position a guy in the shop and do all of that stuff. If you really want to disrupt that market and you want to disrupt that at scale, when you want to bring millions of untapped merchants into this umbrella, you actually need a very, very powerful technology stack. That's what we're building.
Got it.
And plus, on top of it, there are some category level differentiation. Like I can proudly say that probably cycle tires are some of the products which have never been activated for a non-EMI so far. And we actually asked ourselves that question, why not? It's actually whenever a guy is going to replace a tire, 4 tires of his car, it's actually 25,000 rupees expense, right? So why not? Let's just go and experiment. And we tied up with one of the largest tire manufacturer in the country, Apollo Tires, and the program just took off.
Got you. Speaking of technology, can you give us a understanding on what all tech stack you have built? Like, is there a AI ML play? How do you get the collections or EMI payments done? What's the tech stack involved?
Sure. So there are 4 layers to this tech stack, other than the architecture, right? The first layer, because whenever we are tying up with a large enterprise, some of the names which I just took, we do a thorough integration with them. We're sitting in the ERP, and now we're also launching a CRM for them, in which the enterprises would actually be able to manage their own ecosystem when it comes to dealers, when it comes to the schemes, the offers that they want to launch on Paytail platform. They will actually be able to do everything on their CRM platform. So that is the first layer of the tech. The second layer of the tech is actually the merchant application, or the merchant specific application, which is actually used for the merchants to onboard them in less than 60 seconds. And it actually has all the validations, verifications which are built in. Like, for example, each and every merchant in our network is actually GST registered already. And we already have some of the details coming in from the corporate. So if a merchant comes on the merchant application and they enter some of the details like mobile number, GST number, the system will automatically recognize them and will tag it to a specific corporate that, okay, this merchant exists in the network of this corporate, right? And on top of it, there are more features in the merchant application like user management. If the owner of the store, they want to add the sales guys also in the same app, they can actually do that, much like some of the features that you would find on platforms like Amazon. And store management, few more things, right? And on the same platform, the merchant is also able to track the sales, how much he's been selling, and has he received the settlement of the funds or not. All of that features are there. This is the second layer. The third layer is actually the integrations, or the real-time integrations that we have been able to build with all the large banks and NBFCs. And the kind of people that we work with are some of the partner lenders that we have, are ICICI Bank, Cholamandalam, Piramal, HDB Financial, and few more. Essentially, all the guys are $10 billion and above assets under management institutions. Massive, right? Top 10 institutions of the country. And we actually have been fortunately able to build a stack where the entire information that we send to these NBFCs to take a credit call and the entire decision-making process, that whether to lend to a particular consumer or not, and the entire disbursement layer, that once a transaction has been completed, the money actually has to go in the account of the merchant. All of these three layers within the NBFC and lending stack are actually real time. Everything is actually happening in nanoseconds. And to your question, AI/ML, this is where the role of AI/ML actually comes in. Because when a consumer is coming in, there are 5,000 different data points which get generated on the consumer. It could be data point which is coming in from the SMSs, from the bureau, or from some of the alternate data sources that we are actually linked with. And on these 5,000 data points, the data crunching and the entire engine runs at the background on both Paytail's end as well as the lender's end. And that is when the decision is actually being given on the real-time basis, right? So this is the third layer of the tech stack. The fourth and of course, the most important is the consumer application that we have, where the consumer downloads the application, selects the product. There is an entire SKU management framework that we have built in that. Because unlike a personal loan business where the guy is only wanting credit and only wanting a personal loan, here the end use or the use case is actually to buy a specific product. So which means that you also need to have the entire SKU library, where the guy needs to tell us that this is the product that he's buying and this is the price at which he's buying and all of that. And after that, he will go through a journey in which he'll be able to access the real-time credit. So it's a very deeply ingrained tech stack across all of these four layers.
Understood. Now would be very curious to know about the journey of Paytail and your personal journey as an entrepreneur. To start with, I'd love to know, how did you come up with the name Paytail? What's the meaning behind Paytail, and what's the story behind how did you arrive at this name?
On name, of course, there's been a story because Amit and we actually thought about it very deeply, that we've always wanted to bring out a name which reminiscents with the exact problem statement that we are solving and for who we are solving. In the entire playbook, what we ended up realizing that the main customer for us in the entire journey is actually the merchant, because he's the guy who's pushing our product in the market, right, to the consumers. He's the guy who's popularizing Paytail, and he's also the guy to whom we are actually adding the major value, and he's the guy who opens my application daily. So and the market in which we are solving is definitely retail. So the tail came in from retail, right? And what we're solving for them is essentially a better way of receiving the payments and selling the products. So that's why how we combined pay and tail. So I mean the payment as well as retail, so it became Paytail. So that's how we kind of came up with the name.
Okay. When did you think of building this venture? When did you think of entrepreneurship?
So two different things. I'll tell you first the second point. When did I think about the entrepreneurship? I actually grew up in a small business family. My father used to run a small packaging unit in my hometown. I grew up in Punjab. And after my education, actually, if I go back to my childhood, job was never on the table. I mean, I was all set that either I'm actually going to come in this business or I'll actually be running some other business. But when I got out for higher education and everything, then I also ended up realizing that, look, if you really want to build something large and meaningful, it's extremely important to also understand the way the large corporates work, right? And if you really want to create an institute, a large institution, then you really got to be part of some institution before you get some sort of hands-on experience. And I was lucky that coming in from the commerce background and financial background, I actually landed up in some of the banks and some of the I'd say back then it used to be Ivy League profile. Even now, fair to say that when you're in corporate banking, you get to see that exposure both working in a bank as
Mm.
well as when you're working with some of the largest clients, right?
Mm.
So entrepreneurship was definitely almost always there in the back of the mind that at some point I will basically start something of my own. Now, why particularly this business actually came in from my background while I was working.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the last 6-7 years, I've been deeply involved with almost all the large 400 corporate clients in the country in solving for their supply chains,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, just to tell you what a supply chain is, that whenever there is a large business, take any FMCG large business, right?
Mm.
There are thousands of suppliers at any given point of time who are
Mm.
supplying to them, and then which is on the supplies on the buy side for the corporate, and on the sell side of the corporate, there will be multiple distributors, dealers, retailers, consumers will be buying from them, right?
Mm.
And I have actually been funding the supply chain on both the sides, on the buy as well as sell side. Um, while chatting with some of the CXOs in these companies, they always used to tell me that, hey, look, I think you guys have done really, really well, especially in my C4 days, in the way you guys have approached the market and the way you're trying to solve it. But you know what? I'll tell you a gold mine problem, which
Okay.
no one is solving. The gold mine problem lies at the bottom end of the supply chain at the retailer account.
Mm-hmm.
So if one can actually solve a problem in unlocking the hidden potential in Indian retail, and really helping out the merchant and selling more of the brand products to the consumer, that is actually going to be a very, very meaningful and exciting problem statement to solve. So we kept on discussing with multiple corporates about it, and almost everyone pointed us in this direction that there's a very hidden, very large opportunity which is there in the country to disrupt. That's when the idea of Paytail itself
Mm.
took birth. And combined with that, I was always excited about the idea of entrepreneurship.
Mm.
So the two things just converged. And I thought, why not? Why not start something with this and make it probably a very, very large, meaningful franchise?
Mm. When your idea got finalized, then how did you go about executing that idea? Did you first start with the tech stack, or did you talk to customers, or what did you do?
So yeah, look, this is what I've learned in my entire career also so far. Whenever you're thinking about idea,
Mm.
right? What you gotta be watchful about that idea might only be great just in your head.
Mm.
No one else wants to buy it, right?
Correct.
So when we started off, the first step was we actually went on the ground and met close to about 900 plus retailers in multiple geographies. I went to my hometown. I met close to about 100, 150 retailers there. We did I stay in Delhi NCR. So all the way from Noida, Ghaziabad, Faridabad, Delhi, Gurgaon, I covered the entire market and met close to about 500 plus retailers day in, day out
Mm-hmm.
in the Delhi NCR region. So both Amit and we did that market research
Okay.
first of all. And the research was more oriented towards small merchants across categories. We really
Mm.
wanted to find out that if this is actually a problem that people want to solve or only you want to solve. When we learned that, okay, this is what you're thinking, the entire market is also thinking in the same direction, then we just started. Then we didn't stop. Um, and yeah, that's how it was born. The next step was to start putting together a product document.
Okay.
Okay, if this is what you want to do, how things are actually going to work?
Mm.
What's going to happen? What's the kind of tech stack that you really want to build? How it's going to work? How things are going to marry along with each other? And that's where the experience that both of us we come from both finance as well as tech backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
That experience definitely comes handy.
Okay. Speaking of the tech background, I think your co-founder is from tech. So tell us, how did you meet your co-founder? Because finding a co-founder is a big hurdle in the entrepreneur's journey, and it's more like a marriage, because you are gonna be stuck with your co-founder for the rest of your life. So tell us, how did you find your
I'll tell you,
co-pilot?
we are originally two co-founders, both Amit and we both come from financial backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the third guy, who is currently our CTO and soon to be co-founder, we are elevating him as co-founder. That's Rati. So now we're actually going to be three co-founders. Amit and I, very simple. We actually worked together for 3.5 years. back in the C2 days. And Rati and Amit have actually been close friends for quite some time. Their family friends, the families meet and everything. And Rati is the guy who spent 7-8 years in Yatra. He built Yatra's business, Yatra's stack. And then after that, he spent close to about 4-5 years in Monster India. The entire employee side of the tech in Monster India, Rati was leading that stuff. And like both of us, even Rati was extremely excited about starting something of his own. And when this idea kind of came across to him, he also got excited and just joined us.
Any significant challenges along the way that you faced, and how did you overcome that?
Many are. I mean, the entrepreneurship journey is actually full of challenges almost every single day. I'll tell you one funny instance. After doing the entire research, market research, and after putting together a very thoughtful, clearly articulated product document, the first product that we built, when we took it to the market, people threw it on our face that we don't want this. Right? There were glaring gaps in the product. That was actually a funny instance, because the entire research that we had done in the market, we were still thinking that, hey, we will be able to start off. And earlier, when we started off, we only introduced the credit card EMI and the cardless EMIs on the platform. We thought that this also could be a very large, meaningful problem statement to solve. But when we actually went to the market, we actually realized that India is actually a credit start market. If you really want to be in this market, credit is something that you really want to solve for. Right? So this was the first challenge which came our way. The second challenge was we actually began our operations 1st or 2nd of April. And 15th of April was lockdown. It was COVID wave 2. And we were shit scared that I don't know what's going to happen. It's a new business for us. And the entire country, the market that we're solving for is offline retail.
Correct.
And there is a nationwide lockdown which has just been announced. We have few folks we've just hired, and now we don't know what's going to happen. Right? So we figured out some of the alternative ways. We said that, hey, look, we anyways have 2-3 very large corporates on our side that we've recently tied up with. Why don't we try things out? Let's just try and bring all the small merchants on a Zoom call. And the world was divided on that thought. That small merchant on a Zoom call. This sounds like a craziest idea that people have ever heard. But you know what? That idea actually changed the entire stuff. The entire growth trajectory in the platform changed, because what we ended up realizing after that when the market went to lockdown, there was no one else. We were the only single tech player in the market, which was still serving the entire transaction. Whatever amount of transactions were still happening in the market, we were the only ones to serve it. So at that moment, we actually started onboarding 200, 300, 400 merchants in one single day. Almost 200 people would join the webinar. And out of that webinar of 200 guys, 100, 150 would actually sign up on the platform.
Wow.
Right? Very, very challenging, depressing time, but I'm happy that we were able to solve that too. So these were some of the funny and some of the past challenges that we have faced and we've overcome now.
Tell us, what is the meaning of entrepreneurship as per you? How would you define the term entrepreneur, or what is the process of entrepreneurship?
Here, I think I'll tell you one of my strongest learnings so far. I think the entire idea of entrepreneurship, and generally underrated mantra in the market, is just to keep going. Right? There are actually, like in almost every scenario, there are going to be highs and lows and everything. A founder's job always is to figure out that this is just a momentarily situation, whatever that be. And the vision should be at a long-term objective. And the execution plan always has to be from a standpoint that we have to keep going. And I've seen multiple examples in my career so far in companies which are around. People have actually been able to build unicorns. And these are some of the businesses. Even if I talk about 2-3 years back, no one actually knew about them. And these businesses have been existing for almost a decade. So what was the secret sauce in them? The secret sauce was that even after existing for 7 years, 8 years, and all the hardships, all the funding crunch, one single mantra which actually made them unicorn or achieve that status was to keep going.
Got it. And finally, this was one of the lessons you shared, but what else, what other lessons that you have learned that we can incorporate to our ventures?
Well, I think the another lesson is that as a founder, the situation is always overwhelming. And another funny thing is that when we were just 3-4 of us sitting in the office, things were super overwhelming. And Amit and I, we used to chat about that. Hey, look, when we are actually going to have 10 more people in the company and who will be doing this job, our situation is going to be a little better. We'll actually be able to take some respite. Now we are a team of about 180 people, and things are even more overwhelming, right? So as a founder, this is the permanent situation, the way it's gonna be. So you need to really figure out that out of the entire laundry list of the things that you've got to do, how do you really prioritize? What are the things which needs to be solved on what kind of timeline? Everything is gonna look important, but there you'll actually have to figure out your own priorities. There's another very important thing if you really want to build a very large business, having so many people around.
Yeah. Well, that was my last question. On this note, we'll close the session. Thanks for your time, Mr. Vikas, and it was a pleasure to have you on our platform. And my best wishes for Paytail.
Thanks, Priya. Thanks for having me here. It was lovely chatting with you. Very intriguing.
Thank you. Thank you.